damage neighbouring schools that stay under local authority control? It's an important question in the South East because so many schools want to change. 59 in Kent are either applying or already have academy status. That's almost half the secondary schools in the county. In East Sussex, one is open, 2 more are planned, and there are 4 academies in Surrey. Now, the heads of academies and their governors have much more freedom over the curriculum, and they receive their funding direct from government. The Secretary of State for Education believes they will drive up educational standards. But are there unforeseen consequences for the schools and the pupils whose education remains under local authority control? With me in the studio, the former Labour MP for Gillingham, Paul Clark, and Mark Reckless, Conservative MP for Rochester and Strew. Gentlemen, it's nice to have you with us.
Hello.
Paul Clark, first of all to you, what is your concern about what is going to happen to the schools that stay under local authority control?
Well, what's happening is, under the coalition's proposals, you've got a raft of schools that are going for academy status, which is understandable, because in fact almost 3/4 of secondary school heads that were questioned said the main reason for doing this is financial gain. And what is happening is you're getting a skewing of the financial resources, and in addition to that, you're not actually getting academies before under a Labour government were about raising standards and about collaboration, genuine partnerships with other schools to actually raise those standards. You haven't got that under this academy programme.
Academies are still about raising standards, but the key difference is they're about making things even better for already good schools, aren't they? That's the difference.
The whole thing was, academies under Labour were about giving a fresh start to schools that were struggling, but to do it in partnership with, for example, as Brompton Academy, which I sit as a director there, with the University of Kent, so they could bring actually an assistance to that school to raise opportunities for that school. Under the current academies legislation, any school on its own has to have had an outstanding Ofsted
until
which is the bed until 3 weeks ago. Yes, but we're actually talking about the figures that are now there today. Those schools that have applied, because I think you'll see a tailing off that will happen for the reasons, A, because of the changes, but also because of funding is going to dry up.
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's bring Mark Reckless in on the issue of funding for the schools left behind, the ones that stay in local authority control. There will be a smaller pot of money for children with special educational needs and children with difficulty in learning. That isn't right, is it?
Well, the aim with academies is they'll be the same amount in terms of financing, on my understanding. And we saw under Labour, Tony Blair taking the lead on this. We had 200 academies then, now up to 1,000. And as Paul said, they were brought in as a way of driving up educational standards. And I think it's right that we've sort of broadened the number of academies.
You've changed the rules so that you don't actually have challenging schools tying up with stronger schools and partnerships with like the universities, or indeed in your own neck of the woods with the Diocese of Rochester. You're not having that. Yours is just straightforward. Schools can apply to become an academy, end of the story, and actually they are getting a cash windfall.
Let's talk about that. Let's focus on that cash windfall, Mark, because I think it's important that there is an acknowledgement from yours, that one of the parties of government, that there is more money. I mean, some schools have put a figure on it of £600,000 because this pot of cash that used to be disseminated by Kent County Council, the other local authorities, to the schools that really needed it for children with learning difficulties. Now, the schools that become academies automatically get their share of that pot, whether they need it or not. There's less left in the pot for everyone else.
Well, speaking with Kent County Council, I understand that sort of 8.7% of the education monies remains with KCC as the local authority for these shared services. But academies who are sort of opting to take on the power themselves to run some issues that were previously done by others, there is money, I think, coming from central government to offset some of that. And what I'd like to see really is to see all schools becoming academies, because I believe with the previous government we tested destruction, the idea of trying to control schools from the centre. I think we need to give the teachers and the heads and the governors much more freedom to innovate and try and run schools as best as they can.
Let's put that point to Paul Clark. All schools should become academies.
Well, no, because what's happening is, it's wrong to say the money's coming from central government. Actually, £431 million is going to be stripped out of local authority income, and indeed the Conservative chair of the Local Government Association said it can't be right that actually local taxpayers are being asked to fund the rollout of an academy programme of central government. That can't be right. But what is happening is the monies then for those services of special educational needs, behavioural support, central admin, That is what's being taken out.
Well,
but that is what's giving a windfall of between 150 and 570,000 pounds to individual schools each year.
Precisely.
You can understand why head teachers are going for this.
Well, yes, and 72% of them said it's about the finances. But let me ask you about whether or not you both like academies, you both support academies, but you both think they should be slightly different things. Paul, do you agree with Mark Reckless that it would be better if every school was an academy? It would be a level playing field, at least.
No, because academies, the right model for academies is about raising standards, and that must be the underlying demand for this fresh start. They are not going to do that because, look, for example, there are schools within Gillingham, Raynham, Medway Towns, Kent, that have got high achieving levels, which is absolutely great. I want them to continue to have that, but we equally have, and they can become academies overnight, and indeed have become academies.
But the academies that you created haven't all been completely successful, so your model isn't perfect. The Bishop of Rochester School has had to find a new head teacher already.
Well, yes, but if you look at actually the improvement in standards of those academies that were created under a Labour model, those achievements have been very significant.
Let me ask you both. I want to ask one final question. If you both think that academies are a good thing, then do we not allow the best, the most successful schools, if they are academies, to expand to take in some of the pupils who are left in the other schools and let the failing schools close down? Is that the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is the crux of the issue. We want to see good schools expand. We want to see good schools bring in more pupils. And where a school is failing, you can try and turn it round. You can do everything you possibly can. But in extremis, if a school isn't working, it is right that the children from that school should have the chance to go to better schools that are working and giving a good education. And that's what the Academy programme is doing.
Mark Reckless, Paul Clark, thank you both very much for joining us on the Politics Show this week.